Hey internet, so this video is aimed for new players. We're going to talk about how to build a character and their team for any character. So this is giving you the tools to team build and have team synergy. Okay, first things first is figuring out what your character actually does. So go to combat roles, click on the three dots, and in the green it will tell you what your character does. So that's the first thing. Are they a main DPS? Are they a support? Are they a healer? So on and so on. So that's the first thing you got to do. Figure out what your character you're planning to build actually does. Next step, once you know that they are a DPS or support, read the skill tree, read their skills. Like, I know this sounds obvious, but this is a step-by-step on how to build your character. Read the skills, understand what they do. So, knowing how your character works is the next step. Okay. Now, once you know your character is either a DPS or support, pick the appropriate weapon. If it's a DPS, that's pretty basic. Just pick the best weapon that does the most damage. For support, it's a little bit different because depending on the support, whether they buff the main character, or they heal, or they have shields, it's a whole different story. So you got to pick a weapon that provides those bonuses. Okay, so that's step 1 and 2. Well, technically 3. So figure out what your character does, read the skills, and then weapon selection. And step 4, pick the echoes that will give you the most damage if they are a DPS. In terms of support, pick a set that will buff, heal, add shields, and so on. So those are very basic and generic. Next up, we've got your resonance chain. For free to plays, you can pretty much ignore this. You may get 1 if you're lucky and get 2 5-stars. For whales, you're pretty much maxed out. For spenders, you're probably stopping around about 2 or 4. Okay, so that's your resonance chain done. And then step 5, I guess, would be your team selection. So depending on what your roster and who you have available, you want to pick one sub DPS or a secondary support that buffs your main character. And then for your third option, have a healer or support. So how I would do it is main DPS, then sub DPS, and then a healer. However, that may not be the case for other characters. Maybe you want to have a support, and then you want a DPS, and then you want to have a secondary buffer or sub DPS. So depending on which character you have and what they do, the roles change between your characters. So if your character is not a DPS and it's a support, then you would probably already have a DPS built, because you know that your support character doesn't do much damage. So if it's a main DPS, it's pretty straightforward. So main DPS, sub DPS, and then healer. If you're a healer or a support, then you're gonna have a main DPS and then another sub DPS, depending on the situation. Okay, so that's team synergy. I mean, it's very basic and vague, but this is for new players. Now, it really depends on who you have. If you're free to play, you probably won't have many. So you'll probably have like your starters. So you've got your basic 3. So you've got your DPS, you've got your grouper, and then you've got your healer. And I think those are your 3 characters that you get. I think you might get her as well. But I think that's later on, level 30, I think. Level 25 or 30. So you get 4 characters eventually. And then if you beat the Tower of Adversity, you get this dude. But again, I think that's sort of mid-game. So these 2 characters are mid-game. But these 3 you get early on. Okay. So that's your, I guess, team synergy. Now you want characters that work well with your main character. So for example, if your main character is a DPS and they amplify a specific element, then maybe you want to have a sub DPS that is the same element as that character. So let me just switch to a different team. So okay, this is a good example. So this character amplifies fusion damage, and so she's a main DPS. She also amplifies fusion damage. So that means your characters, you ideally want a secondary fusion character, so that way you can switch between the 2 characters and buff each other. So maybe you want Mortar
for
example.
I'm the one you need.
So
really
these 2 can buff each other.
Can I? Let's just get this done.
But if you don't have that character, and
let's reach farther destinations together.
So if you're gonna pick her as the main DPS and you don't have another fusion character, then your starter character that probably supports her is a better choice, because this character can group up enemies, so that may be a better choice for you. So it really depends on what your roster is. Now I digress. Let's come back to this video. So let's recap on what you need to know. So step 1, identify what your character does. So combat role and then the dots. Step 2, read your talent tree or your skill tree. Know how your character operates. Then step 3 and 4, pick your weapon and echo. So if they're a DPS, pick the best weapon that deals the most damage. That's the easiest one. If they're a support, pick the right weapon that does the right thing. With that may be healing, shields, maybe energy regen, etc., and so on. Echoes, once again, DPS is the easiest. Just pick a set that deals the appropriate damage and deals the most damage. We won't go into the specifics, but let's just say crit rate, crit damage, then your elementals, and then you got your attack percentage or flat attack. That's cookie cutter for all DPS pretty much. For your supports, that's where it gets very complicated, because it doesn't scale the same. They've got different stats depending if they're healer, shielder, buffer, energy regen. So supports actually require a lot more attention to detail. So that's step 4. And then step 5, depending on your resonance chain, I would say don't worry about it if you're free to play. If you're a light spender, probably number 2 or number 4. If you're a whale, you're pretty much maxed. And for your weapon, you're going to have your signature weapon max as well. So that's if you're a whale. Okay, so those are the 5 steps. So identify your character, pick the weapon, pick the echoes, read the skill. I would say probably identify character, read the skill, pick your weapon and echoes, and then have your team supporting your main character. I know these are generic steps, but this is for new players, and I hope this helps. Thanks for watching. Hope you had a great day. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, ring the bell, turn on all notifications, leave a comment below if this was helpful, become a member if you want to support the channel, drop a super thanks if you want to. Until next time, see ya.